Hello everybody, my name is Stephen Marchant and this is my woodshop. Today we're going to be talking about the Mitre Saw. So this is the Mitre Saw. It is very simple to use, very easy to use, very handy. There's not a lot you can do on this that you can't do on a table saw. It just makes cuts a lot quicker, a lot easier, and if you've got a stop block, which I'll explain in a second, it will make cutting wood of the exact same size an absolute breeze. Before we get started with it, I just want to remind you to please subscribe to my channel. I talk about a different tool every week, other than last 2 weeks because the table saw was in two halves. But if you are just starting out woodworking and you want to learn the absolute basics, you don't know what a scroll saw does, you don't know what a table saw does, you don't know what a hammer's for, then this is the channel for you. You just watch the videos and you'll be an expert. You'll be an expert in 15 minutes. That's the Stevie Marchant Woodshop's guarantee. So I post brand new woodworking videos every Monday. They go live at about 6 o'clock in the evening. And there's a fly in here. Yeah. So, without much further ado, let's check this bad boy out. First of all, very simply, all a Mitre Saw is a blade that spins on an arbor that's attached to this motor and it's got a handle on it. And what it does, it pivots down like so and chops wood. Right, I'll see you in the next video. So these are, like I said, very easy to use, very simple to use. There's a pivot point and you put your wood up against the fence here, so that is perpendicular to the blade, and it will cut a perfect 90-degree angle in your wood, if you've got it set up to a 90-degree angle. So let's take a closer look at it. So, first and foremost, as the name suggests, a mitre saw is used for cutting mitres. So as well as cutting 90-degree angles on pieces of wood, they can cut pretty much any angle up to a 45 degree, and this one does a couple of degrees beyond, but I don't think I've ever used that far. So with this model, you unscrew this handle here, pull the lever up, and it turns along the axis, and you can cut any angle labelled on here. So it's very handy. 45 degree is there, 90 degrees in the middle, and then there's markings for 15, 22.5, 30. All Mitre saws will differ, but you know, these are, I think, probably the most common angles, which is why they mark them, but I don't think I've ever used anything other than 0 and 45 on mine. So for a very basic mitre saw, that is all there is to it. Simple as, nice and easy. It cuts wood at an angle, which is called a mitre. I'll demonstrate one of those for you now. So we have a nice straight piece of wood here, well, straightish, as straight as you're going to find in my workshop anyway. Straight piece of wood here. Say you've measured it out to a particular length, or you want to cut it perfectly in half, you want to chop a crappy bits off the end of it like this one, then you literally line it up, and then I always do a dry run first, which means that I don't switch the power on. I pull the trigger to bring the mitre saw down and just see where the blade is going to hit. So then you move your wood to where the blade's going to stop. So I'm just going to chop the end off right here. And once I've got it into a good enough position, I will use my fingers to hold the wood down and then pull the trigger, pull it down nice and slowly. And what you want to do is the piece that you're holding on to, which is most likely going to be the workpiece, when you've pulled it down and it's cut, Whilst you're waiting for it to stop spinning, pull your workpiece away from it and that'll stop it just from flicking back at you. Little pieces like this I don't worry too much about because they're only little. And there you have it. You have a nice, perfectly clean, straight cut. So the next thing you can do with the Mitre Saw, as I've showed you before, is cut mitres on it. So turned it to the 45-degree mark here. If you're making a picture frame or a border, anything like that that requires mitre joints, 45 degrees is what you'll probably want to go for. I'll put my ear defenders back on. So same as before, you line up your cut. I'll just chop the end off again. But before we do that, I'm going to put a cup of coffee on. And yeah, so that is what is known as a mitre cut. So we've got two boards, and if you noticed, I flipped this one upside down to cut the second mitre, so that when you turn it over, you get a perfect 45-degree angle, which makes a nice 90-degree frame. And that is all that's meant by a mitre. It's just a diagonal cut along the board. Okay, the next type of cut that these machines are capable of doing is called a bevel cut. Not all Mitre Saws could do bevel cuts. These are for if you spend a little bit more money and get a slightly better model, then they'll have more of a range of adjustability on them. So on the side of the saw here that you can't see, there is another one of these dials which measures the bevel angle. So there's a little clamp at the back. I'm just going to undo. And you'll see that the Mitre Saw pivots this way as well as left to right. And this is what's known as a bevel cut. Tighten that clamp back down. Boop. So instead of cutting a diagonal this way in the wood, you'll make it this way. I'll just demonstrate that now for you. Try and position myself so that you can see it. So as you can see, rather than being sideways like that, it's gone endways like that. So if you think a bevel is just a mitre cut that cuts into the face of the wood rather than sideways across the face of the wood, if I'm explaining that right. So there you are. Looking at this way on, it's just a mitre cut. But looking at that way on, it's a bevel because you're cutting across the end grain. You can run bevels along the edge of the wood, but that requires a table saw rather than the Mitre Saw. So as you can see, the Mitre Saw is quite dusty. It creates a lot of sawdust. That was just from 3 simple cuts. It's covered in sawdust now. And here's that dial in a little bit more detail. So to make the bevel cuts, there's a ruler on the side here that tells you which angle you're cutting at. Here's the lever that you loosen to be able to move it, and it's got a little clamp there with positive stops, which means that it will lock down on 5, 10, 15, 20, all those different angles, so you know you've got them in the right place. So if you look at the back of the saw, this one is called a sliding mitre saw, which means it's got 2 bars on the back, and the mitre saw, if you undo this knob here, the mitre saw can slide along these tracks, and what that does, it makes for a much longer cut. So we've obviously just been cutting these pieces of wood here, which are very thin. You could have cut those in about 30 seconds with a handsaw, but sometimes it calls for cutting something much wider, probably wider boards than this. But sometimes you need a bit of extra reach. Most saws will have a massive blade on for cutting wider boards, but if you can't get one with a blade that big, then a sliding mitre saw is the next best thing. And like I said, that makes for a much longer cut. Okay, and that is all from me today. Thank you very much for watching. I really do appreciate every one of you for tuning in. Please subscribe to my channel if you want to see more videos like this, tell you how to use pretty much everything that I have in my shop. I'll do an instruction video for it. So if you're setting up, or if you haven't got a clue at all about woodworking, watch these videos and they'll give you an idea of how easy these tools really are to use. Clears up a lot of the stigma around them and a bit of the uncertainty and that feeling of, ooh, I wouldn't be able to do that, it looks too scary. I post new woodworking videos up every Monday, so tune in next Monday to see my brand new one. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time.